Welcome to School Talk. I'm Nadja Varney, your host. Every generation brings with it challenges, changes. Well, today we're going to talk about the police in this new generation. And I'll be talking with the sheriff of Bristol County in Massachusetts. We're going to talk about how the police today relate to students, to schools, to communities, and how they do what they promote on some of their vehicles. They say they're there to serve and protect. So it's my delight to welcome as my guest the sheriff of Bristol County in Massachusetts, Sheriff Thomas M. Hodgson.
Great to be
Did
here.
I say your name correctly?
You did, and you did it very well.
Thank you. I
Thanks.
have an unusual name too, so I'm hoping I got it right.
You did.
Thank you. Well, I know you were a sheriff, or you were a sheriff, I think, or you were a lieutenant in Maryland before you came here in 1997 to be our sheriff. And something else that impressed me about you is that you were a counselor at large in New Bedford on the city council. So you've been looking at law enforcement from a number of angles, haven't you?
I sure have. I started out my interest in law enforcement relatively young. When I was about 16, 17 years old, I had two brother-in-laws, one that was a Montgomery County police officer and one that was in D.C. I used to spend time riding along with them and found it to be a very challenging, exciting job, but one that was importantly rooted in public service. And I never really thought about politics, but when I moved to New England, I moved to New Bedford and thought that there was more that could be done, that I could serve, and I decided to run for the city councilor's council at large and was fortunate to have been elected.
Well, I appreciate that because we were talking before we came in about how much all of our past experiences help us to learn and grow. But I have to tell you, when I thought about having you come on, I think we met quite informally at the bagel shop over near Dartmouth, and I was grateful to hear that you were willing to come because I haven't had a sheriff.
How could anybody
here.
say no to you, really?
Well, thank you. I actually did have an assistant commissioner some years back, Kathy Dennehy, I think was her name.
Yes, who worked for me, by the way, after she left as my superintendent.
And then Ms. Vicari, she was doing education for the inmates, for the juvenile inmates or something. But when I said, let me look up what happens at the sheriff's office, I had no idea. They gave me 2 pages off of the internet. I couldn't believe it. From law enforcement to human resources, anti-crime, training programs, public education, communications, victims. I mean, this goes on and on. So I think this is wonderful that we finally meet someone from the sheriff's office. How would you describe, though, if someone said, what is the sheriff's office? How would you characterize it or describe it?
Well, it's more than just a prison where inmates are held for doing various crimes. It's really a place where we are supposed to be challenging those who are in our custody for however long to focus on rehabilitating themselves, adding tools to their toolbox they didn't have when they came in, so they're better equipped to go back out and serve in society in a productive way, get a job and so forth, and continue into rehabilitative programs if that's what they need. But importantly, not be looking to come back to prison because now we've offered them some alternatives, as well as using the inmates, for example, to pick up garbage on the highways. It's a way to sort of give the taxpayers back a return on their investment, but at the same time give the inmates a chance to get out and do something good for the community. They paint the inside of senior centers. They prepare all the baseball fields in our county for the kids, so mom and dad don't have to volunteer to go down on weekends and get the fields ready. They can stay home with their children. And then, of course, we do educational programs, which are critically important today for the students as well as for the teachers.
Well, let me delve into that a little more,
Sure.
These programs. But by the way, are all these different jobs that you've just described, are they voluntary? Do they sign up for what they want to do, or are they just assigned these things to do?
The inmates themselves actually, they all volunteer. They don't have to do
it is volunteer.
It is volunteer.
Yeah.
So they go out and they can sign up. It's part of their work program. They can earn up to 7.5 days a month, good time off of their sentence. But we break it up. They used to be they would just get it if they were well behaved. I felt it should be earned based on 2.5 days for education, another 2 days for 2.5 days for substance abuse programming or those types of life skill building programs, and then another two for education as well, and then working in the prison, of course. So those are all.
Well,
Those are all
now,
benefits.
I know that you do all this within the prison, but from your office, I've heard that you are connected to schools and so forth. Right now, we call ourselves the digital generation. Everybody's on the internet, and there's lots of opportunity. I know I'm a former teacher, and so many opportunities for learning, but I think there are also some very serious concerns about what's going on the internet. I read a little bit about a program, I think you're connected to it, it's called SAFE.
iSafe?
iSafe. Could you tell us what that is?
Sure. What that is it's a program where we actually train teachers, we train police officers, and in some cases parents on this, where they can become certified to teach others on the safety of internet use. Look, when we were growing up, of course, we were told when we were at school by our parents, listen, when you're walking home, if somebody stops and offers to give you a ride,
It's a stranger.
don't get in the car. Don't believe any of the stories that somehow they were sent to pick you up. Today, they're not looking for the kids on the street anymore. They're coming into the kids' bedrooms on their computers, and they know a lot of these kids may be home. Moms and dads might be working. They see it as a vulnerable time for the kids to be able to give them some attention they might be looking for, and encouraging the kids to leave the home. And suddenly, we have these situations where kids are now either kidnapped, and in some cases, even worse outcomes. So, in addition to the bullying part, I mean, we know that kids are being bullied on the internet by other kids. Sexting that's going on. Kids don't realize this, but you can be sending, inappropriate pictures over the internet in 7th, 9th grade and find out I can't get into college because I'm now labeled a sex offender.
Wow.
So these are things that, with this new technologies and the new sort of cyber world, that creates all new, not only risks for children and families, but also the concerns of them not being able to get ahead in their careers.
So your programs that are connected to you, the iSafe and Internet Danger or whatever you're calling it, Stranger Danger or something like that, these are actually helping to teach teachers, parents, police, law enforcement people, so that they can go out and use some of the programs and techniques.
And
that
teach those same programs, but also understand, particularly for teachers, when they're in the classroom and they're talking to their kids, they can tell them, these are the dangerous kids, these are the things. And we go to the schools, of course, and talk about it. I do a program called Choices where I go and give them the simple message, having been an educator, of the important message of just choice. What are the consequences of bad choices? What are the empowerments of good choices?
That's excellent, because all of our choices determine what happens in our lives.
Yes.
Absolutely. In fact, that leads me to my next question. So many kids make a bad choice and they get into violence. And I did want to talk with you a little bit about youth violence. Pardon me. I read recently that from the CDC, they said youth violence is the 3rd leading cause of death for young people between ages 15 to 24, and that's pretty frightening. I read an anecdote in one of the journals. It was a detective in Randolph, and he said recently he had a youngster, a high school kid, who snatched a cell phone from the teacher's desk, and he said he now has the ability to bring him to a probable cause hearing rather than walking in and cuffing the child. And he says that's better, and it's helping him and his community to have these new ways of dealing with youth violence. So right now, they say that law enforcement, or these people in law enforcement, are telling me that the crime has gone down. I don't have the most recent, I couldn't find very recent figures, but they said that in Bristol County, some of this juvenile crime was down about 28%. So I'd like you to talk about how you're working with neighborhoods and schools to kind of diminish and prevent some of this youth violence that we're so concerned about.
Sure. Well, we of course, we go to the schools, we talk to the kids. We actually have a program called Project SLAM, where we bring the children to the school. We bring about 2 or 3 busloads a week from different schools around our county. They come in and they hear from the 2 inmates.
Oh, they bring them to the jail or
to the prison. Yes, to Dartmouth. And then they go into a visit room, and then the 2 inmates come in and they speak to them about choice and how they started out and how they ended up coming to jail. And then when the inmate finishes telling the story, then they go inside and they get a tour of the prison. And it's a very, very effective program. But it's only one component of education that tells them, listen, if you make a bad choice and you go down the road we did, rather than stay where you are in school and use that empowerment to be able to know you can go home, go out with your friends after, where we have to go back to our cell, we're told what we get to eat, what we wear, what time we have to go to bed, and we don't get to watch whatever show we want because we don't have the TVs or the video games. So we use that as a tool. We also use other tools in the schools in trying to help the teachers. I just spoke to a superintendent recently about in an area where they're having a lot of problems with kids acting out against educators. That we would talk to the educators about how to deal and diffuse these kinds of situations without the confrontation. That's what we do every day in the prison. We're dealing with the now grown-up adult of the child that they're now dealing with in the classroom. So we want to be able to help them understand that you can diffuse these situations through training and not have to have the kind of confrontations that you otherwise could have in a case where a kid's acting out, as well as having the role models. You know, they unfortunately have not had the monies to put the resource officers in the schools, but it's very valuable to have them in there, walking around, interfacing with the children, and giving them the guidance. I'm a big believer that we have got, if we're going to deal with this crime problem in our country, we have and turn back the recidivism rates in prisons, lower our populations. We need to nationally redirect our monies toward the front end, 3rd, 4th graders.
Oh,
Get
this
in
is very...
and educate them before they come through the
amazed.
front door of a prison.
That is very exciting to hear from someone in law enforcement, because we have been talking about early education for so long, and you know it never gets funded. Somehow you think the 1st grade, kindergarten, 2nd grade, I could go in there and teach that. Oh, I used to love to have student teachers come and show them what you really need to know, the pedagogy, the methods, class management, all the things that we need. So to hear you saying that is important, those early years to talk about staying away from violence, making good choices.
Keep them from coming through the front door. You know, I believe that every sheriff should aspire to put themselves out of business, because if that's what you're doing,
you want to put yourself out of business.
Absolutely.
You better explain.
Well, because if you're aspiring to do that, that means you're directing people to healthy behaviors, taking them away from the old behaviors, sort of helping them reprogram their learned behaviors to be more positive, productive behaviors. And we need to make sure at the early age where the behaviors are starting to be changed at 3rd and 4th grade that we intervene at that time. Because if we can do that, we won't create another more violent, larger population. And anybody that's telling you that, look, the answer to solving our problems is more programs in the prison. You and I both know, and I think most people do, most of your viewers know this, that look, changing behaviors in people who have good structured lives is difficult.
Hard.
When you ask us to go a different way to get the bus because they rerouted it, we have a hard time with that. It's better for us, faster, but we don't want to change. So change is difficult to come by, never mind people who don't have those structures that we had.
Yes, well, I appreciate what you're saying now, but we need to take a quick break.
Sure.
But when we come back, I'd like to know whether there are some young people or children who have they're in a certain situation. Would that make it more likely for them to make poor choices? We'll be right back. This is important. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
My life is full of statistics. Thing is, I could have dropped out of school and become one myself, but I didn't, because I had people that believed in me. Here's another statistic. 7,000 students drop out every school day. That's 1 every 26 seconds. It's time that students know that we believe in them.
Inspire a student and share your message of support at boostup.org.
Sheriffs, how closely, we were talking about teen violence and some of the ways that you're working with schools and so forth. But I'm wondering, when I was teaching, I found that kids that weren't doing well in school, they seemed to be more drawn to the wrong choices. Have you found that? How does the performance in school relate to youth crime?
Well, I think it has a direct correlation. There's no question about it. look, when children aren't doing well in school, they're in a group environment, they begin to lose their self-confidence. They start to find other ways to try to make themselves important, but it's not through healthy decisions and activities. So the confidence of knowing that you're in with your peers and competing and being successful is very important. When you aren't able to keep up, and it can be for a whole host of reasons. You could be an ADHD child, you could be ADD, you could have things that are impacting family issues at home, emotional issues that are just not allowing you to concentrate.
Homes,
That's
yeah.
right. So all of these things play into it, and the child starts to lose their sense of self-worth in relation to other classmates, and then they start to fall out. It's much like when they were, when a child was acting out, they would suspend the child, send the child home. The child already isn't keeping up because the child's fooling around in the
send them
classroom.
home.
Now you're going to send them further behind to a point where they're just going to feel like, I could never dig out of this hole now. And so they give up. So yes, it's very much a part of the problem that contributes to the dysfunctional work activities.
Well, I think that many of the schools are trying. They have alternative schools, night schools. They are trying to reach some of these students. And I think even teachers now, as they are trained, they're learning more and more how to deal with new behaviors that may be in languages and things that we've never heard before.
Sure.
I remember teaching in Attleboro, and we had, I forget how many dialects and languages in one, and then the mobility rate. They're there for 6 months and they're gone.
Sure.
You know, from being in
Yes.
Bedford, Fall River, and some of our towns.
And that challenge of it's very difficult for the educators, because if the educators could have the child, they need a break, need to go home, but if they could keep those children, they'd be able to turn those kids around. The problem is a number of these children go back to the very dysfunctional, what is normal behavior, abnormal in the schools, but normal at home, and they never really, at least they're getting a perspective, but they're continuing to be in this environment. Unfortunately, we can't legislate family values, and we can't dictate inside the homes for parents to be responsible parents to help their kids.
I've heard some teachers say, those who are kind of veterans, saying that I think that the world is trying to help us do what many of the parents used to do.
No question. I mean, you know, so many teachers are giving kids, buying coats for children that coming to school in the winter with no coats, or families just don't, for whatever reason. Some children, one child I know of in a school, my wife was a principal for almost 20 years, 28 years. The child stayed up all night looking through the keyhole, was tired in school, falling asleep, was called out on it in first grade, asked why. Child said, because my mom had overdosed once before, and her friends came back over, and I was watching through the keyhole all night because they were going to leave and I didn't want her to die. The one adult in the house was the first grader.
The first grader, yeah. Which leads me to the situation of poverty. Now, not all drug-addicted people
That's
are
right.
in poverty, that's for sure. They wouldn't be sending it over here so much. People are buying it, wealthy people and people who have means. But children who live in poverty seem to be much more prone to problems in school and with crime. Do you find that?
Well, again, yes. I mean, I think that children that don't have the basic needs find themselves to be different. If they're going to school without being hungry, they obviously aren't going to be in a good situation to be able to learn. They also begin to stigmatize themselves around being different. And when that starts to happen, they remove themselves from the normal sort of categorization of being like the other kids and sort of see themselves as different.
You refer often to the child's feeling and understanding of their own self-esteem. I noticed that theme that runs through, so that's very important, I guess, with anybody, prisoners, children, people. Now, earlier you referred to how you think it's a good idea to have police in the schools and so forth. But, you know, we all heard, it was on the news about this rogue guy that just yanked this girl out of her seat and threw her across the floor. You don't hear the good things, of course, but can you talk to that? How should they function in a school? And does anybody give them or the teachers guidelines as to when do you bring in a policeman?
Yeah, the same way that we deal with it in the prisons. We're dealing with the much more grown-up version of the child that now maybe is a troubled child in the school. But the reality is, it all has to do with communication, how you talk to them. When the officers are in the schools, they want to cross the path of those who maybe they identify as potential risks, and start to let them know, hey, you know, you're a good kid. You got some real promise. Start to engage the child. Understand what makes the child tick, what makes the dysfunctional behaviors be the sort of the normal draw to them, and try to change those behaviors. Don't wait till the situation happens and then deal with it. The police officers, in my view, should be there as a proactive way of strengthening the kids' feelings around authority and around some they view as authority as being helpful to them, obviously. Not where some parents will say, if you don't behave, I'm going to tell the policeman. That's not the way to deal with it. We're there to help people, and we want to make sure that kids understand that and draw closer to us than they would perhaps to the other people who are trying to get them involved in illicit activity.
I just wonder, though, if teachers have guidelines, maybe that's not developed yet, because in that terrible incident that we heard about, the teacher called in a policeman at a point where I, as a teacher, would never have called in a policeman to deal with a child who wouldn't answer me.
Right.
I'd ignore the child until after class.
Sure.
But she brought in, I wonder, did the teachers have any training about how do you call in a policeman in a serious situation?
Well, I think that's a great question, and it's one that needs to be really looked at. There should be a protocol.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to, as I had mentioned earlier, I talked to a superintendent of one of our school systems and said, listen, we'll come in and teach how to diffuse, teach the teachers how to diffuse. The school environment's changed. They have far more, over the years, far more kids who are coming in with dysfunctional behaviors and parents who really aren't parenting them. So they have, the one situation that you just referred to may have been compounded by two other situations that had happened earlier in the day. You don't know the situation. We want to make sure that we can teach these educators and give them the tools that they really need in today's environment.
So they don't
with these
have
kind
to
of situ-
call
That's right.
so quickly on a police
That's
or
exactly
law
right.
enforcement agent.
That's exactly right.
Now, say if a child is convicted of a crime, say a junior in high school, what happens if they're caught in a crime, either in school or outside of school?
Well, if it's a crime that's rising for them to get involved in the judicial system, we have, of course, we run the juvenile court in Bristol County. We, when they would go to the juvenile court, if they're accepted by the judge, they would be put in strict program. They'd have to comply with the program. The family is involved in the program. They're brought in on it. The child may have to go to rehab, also do some writing
counseling or
around it, some counseling. And then we have staff that actually deal with the families on the outside and follow the child during this process. We've had great success with that.
Oh, that would be
program.
important.
Yes,
Yeah.
because they want to make sure that the child's meeting the requirements and that the family's also doing their part in the supportive effort of what this whole intact sort of rehabilitative plan is about.
Well, there's no secret that along with the violence, we have this terrible drug problem. And we're reading all the time about so many deaths and suicides, overdoses, and so forth. So I'm wondering, how are you dealing with this whole increase in the use of opioids and drugs of all kinds? We hear about Narcan, but it's a big problem. It's not something that's just going to be solved with running around and keeping kids from overdosing. What do you think about this whole situation?
Well, it's bigger than just a problem. It's an epidemic, and one we have to get our hands around quickly. We just received the largest grant in the state on the opioid problem. Where not only are we dealing with the sentenced inmates, but people who are coming in who are pretrial that may only be there for a very short period of time and may not even get sentenced. If they're drug involved, we're getting them educated and involved in the sort of anti-opiate program. We're also dealing with the treatment, and we're also having people on the outside following these inmates when they leave to make sure that they're not continuing in that same dysfunctional behavior. But the other part of this that's so critically important, and I've been saying this for a very long time, it's back to what you did very well in your career, which is education. Educate these children early on about the dangers of drugs. It's not just say no to drugs, it's letting them know. And we go to the schools and actually show them scenes where people have overdosed, what it's like losing a brother or a sister, and getting them to really feel what this loss means. Not just that somebody else overdosed and they're on the page 4 of the newspaper because it's the third one in a week. It's about each one of those lives mattered to somebody, and we want them to know that if you have a brother or a sister or a mother or father and they were to overdose, what the feelings would be and what the trauma is to you and your family.
You know, I think that is so amazing because even in movies, videos, kids see people, boom, he's dead. They see them laying there with blood, and the plot goes on. But nobody really ever explains all the feelings and what really happens in real life. I mean, it looks very macho to get a gun and shoot that guy down. But this is so important that you're doing that. I haven't heard anybody else talk about that follow-up.
It's critically important. And you know, in my mind, as you and I are talking about this, and these discussions are happening all over, we know what the answer is. The most effective and simplest answer that we could possibly provide to turn this tide back is to have strong families, people that are going to spend time with their children, recognize their achievements. That's why we have so many gangs, people joining gangs, because these kids don't feel like anybody's recognizing their achievements. So what they're doing is they're going out, and even if it's stealing a car and that's recognized by the gang as doing something good, they were recognized for their achievement. They'll at least join the gang, and somebody will care about them.
Well, Sheriff, our time is over. Believe it or not, we could have gone on. I have many more questions for you. Maybe you'll come back another time.
Love to.
Thank you so much for all your insights and your examples. They've been very helpful. I'm sure our viewers will really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your great work.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'll turn to our viewers and say, I think that officers of the law are now recognizing more and more what parents and good, wise teachers have known, that the ultimate goal is prevention, getting to youth before the violence starts. Remember, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's an old saying, but it's very relevant school talk.